When I'm adding my darks in, I don't start in the background, I don't start anywhere else. I start in the main area of interest. I get that area how I want it to look, and then that tells me how much information I need in the rest of the painting. I love street scenes, and I love painting cars and people, and I like capturing the atmosphere of a scene. So I'm gonna go over all of those things today. So you want the cars and the people to be in the right scale with each other. A couple things to remember. Find the eye line and put everyone's head right on that line. So this guy here, there's someone back here. We want to make sure all of their heads are about on the same line there. Now, once you get the people in place, you can pay attention to the scale of the cars. These guys are on motorcycles or bikes, so they're down about the height of a car. When someone is standing, typically their head is going to be right about here compared to a car. I try to keep the tops of the cars relatively on the same plane. That way, it keeps your scene in the right perspective, and it keeps your vehicles and your people in the right scale with each other. So I've laid in the drawing for the scene, and there's something unique here about this, is there's a light colored tarp here on top of this building. That tarp needs to be lighter than the blue of the sky, but I want to paint the sky in the first wash. So occasionally, you'll come across lighter items that you want to tone before you do the first wash of your painting. Let me show you what that looks like. So I just laid in a little bit of color for that on dry paper. Then I dry the paper and move into the first wash of the scene. So I'm wetting down the back of my paper, the front of my paper, and I'm gonna start with the sky. So up here I'm using some cerulean, some cobalt blue, and I'm painting right around that lighter part of the roof. Now, as I move down the scene, I wanna think about all the areas in the scene that are in light, all the lighter colors for areas. And back here in the distance, I'm laying in some of this tan color for the buildings that I'll be painting around. Here, I'm getting into this building. I'm laying in some warm tone raw sienna with a little bit of lavender and a little bit of burnt sienna here for this area. And I'm dropping in all that light tone as I work my way methodically around the scene. And here, there's some red on the car. There's a little bit of blue reflecting in the windows. There's more of a tan colored car, a darker color car, some of the color for the window. All of these areas, I'm moving around the scene, laying in that local color and thinking through the lightest values of the entire painting. I did wet down the back and the front of the paper, minus the area around the roof because I wanted to get that hard line. But everywhere else, I dampened the paper like I typically do. And you'll see I'm getting a hard edge here, but the paper is still damp enough that it makes it really easy to work from this wet edge and continue to get a nice fluid wash over the entire painting. So I'm bringing that down, laying in a little bit of different tone for this building here, slightly darker than the sky, and then little bits of color here and there, some red for the lights of the car, laying in the skin tone. And when I get all the way done with the first wash, this is what it looks like. And after everything has dried, this is what we're left with. And it's time to start thinking about the middle value. I'm gonna start over here on the roof. This part of the roof was darker than this lighter area that was covered with a tarp. And I'm bringing that down here, getting right into the side of the building, the value for that. So the building had these windows, and I had to get the right color for the light area of the windows in the first wash because I knew I would come back in and paint around those areas and leave that behind. So here, I like to use a middle round brush in this wash typically, but if I have a lot of areas that I'm painting around things in more detailed work, I can use something smaller like this. This is an Escoda Perla size 12 brush. Working my way around, understanding that the side of the building is darker, but that's not going to be the final value. I'm going to have to go over that once again to get that harder defined edge for the shadow side of the building. But I'm dropping in some of that color now, working over into this area, looking at the trees and all this information. Now, when it comes to painting street scenes and most scenes in general, I like to really try and simplify, especially when it comes to the background of the painting. I don't want all my attention to be sucked to the back of the scene with a lot of contrast and hard edges. There's a balance that we're trying to find between showing what is in the back of the painting and not getting too involved where it becomes the primary part of the scene or it competes with the primary parts of your scene as well. So squinting, really trying to get the gist and create an impression of what you're seeing back there and not get so consumed with every little building and every little shape and trying to get it just exactly how it is. For this tree, I'm using some raw sienna and some Cobalt Turquoise. I'm using a bigger brush now, back to my middle-sized brush. That's a silver black velvet, size 16. Taking my time, working into this tree shape, looking at the reference, trying to make it look loose and impressionistic, bringing that tree down. And while the shape of that tree is still damp, I loaded up some darker pigment on my brush. So I worked in some more neutral tint, richer pigments of what I'm already using here, and drop that in while this is damp. And that creates some soft variation in the shape. And as I work down here into some of these shadow areas, I'm negatively painting around some of the figures, some of the cars, the little bits of light, and suggestion of detail in the background of the scene. And I'm tying the shadow side of the little trees and bushes and things down here into that shape, letting it blend together on the paper, and suggesting that some of the cars connecting the shadow side into this shape, and working around some of the buildings that are in light, connecting the little shadow bits underneath those buildings. I really just want to kind of show that there are buildings in the background, but not get too consumed with all of that detail. I try to tie the figures or the shapes into each other, into the light values, into the middle values through each phase of the process. So this car has light values, has middle values wrapped up into it, and then later on I'll get to the darks. The figures, the same thing, has light values, has middle values that are tied up into the other middle value shape, the main middle value shape of the scene, and also darks will bring that together when we get to that point. Whether it's your complete painting, whether it's objects in your painting, you want to try to have a full range of values, and you want to try to make it nice, interconnected, and really try to unify your scene in that way as much as you can, rather than painting separate little things that look like they're cut out and pieced together in the painting. So I'm moving over to here. I'm getting into the shadow side of this, and that's going to define the edge of this wall into some of the detail on the back building. And as I bring this down, just like I did with the other cars and the other figures, I'm tying in the middle values of the shape into the larger middle value connected shape. You hold off on adding in the darks and the details until you get to the end of the process. And then that brings the whole thing together, pulling in those middle values and using the shadow from this wall as a connector. So that comes all the way over through behind our main character here, brings a feeling of connection, and it interlocks all the different parts of the scene together. And now I'm getting to a little more detail, adding the rest of the bike here with this figure and bringing that larger shadow shape through, connecting it to my bike rider. All right, I let that middle value shape dry, and now I'm getting into the final bits of darks and details for this scene. So I'm gonna put the shadow underneath the car, connect the shadow over to here. And this is a little thing here, but you can see, I know that the sidewalk kind of raises up a little bit. Well, I can imply that with how the shape of the shadows are coming off the car. So here that it kind of raises up a little bit, same thing down here, it raises up a little bit. Just a little detail, but those little things do make a difference in your scene. So I'm getting the rest of the darks on this car. And when you start to do this, I typically try to focus my painting in the middle ground first. So when I'm adding my darks in, I don't start in the background. I don't start anywhere else. I start in the main area of interest. I get that area how I want it to look. I polish it the most. And then that tells me how much information I need in the rest of the painting. If I'm not thinking about the painting as a whole, I'm going to get too involved in the building in the background or some area that isn't as important as this area right here where the main figure is, the main car, and I handle those areas first, and then I move around the rest of the scene to add the finish that is needed. And those shadows under the car will anchor it to the ground and bring more detail into this area of the painting. And I needed some more darks and details to finish up this area. And now I'm finally getting to the shadow side of this building. I mentioned this earlier, and I knew that that middle value wasn't going to be the final value. And that's really getting the light to feel believable in our scene. I got the shadow under here. and what a difference that makes as far as the light is concerned. And now I'm down here adding a little bit of defining darks. So getting a few darks in the background, got my secondary figure in place and a few little details on the building. And these directional lines are nice to lead us into the painting. And again, they define the edge of that sidewalk a little bit more, but those shadows that I've curved up are working along with these lines to help that feel believable. A few more little lines on the tarp, little finishing touches, polish the scene. And there is a look at the finished painting. So we worked through the light values, the middle values, and then using the darks and details to focus that painting and bring the whole thing together and to finish the scene. Next week, I'm going to talk about picking the right subject to paint. Are you picking subjects that are too difficult? Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit that little bell icon to get notifications. I post a new video every single Monday. You're not going to want to miss a single one of these, so make sure that you are subscribed. I covered a lot of things today. I know it can be overwhelming, especially if you are not used to this methodical approach to painting. If you need a resource to help you right now in understanding a little bit more of what I talked about today, take a look at this. Have you ever been really excited about a painting and you get all set up, you find that right reference that you're excited about, and then it's time to go and you feel lost? I have a free resource that I want to give to you today that can help with these problems. My 5 steps to plan a successful watercolor painting. I walk you through the crucial planning phase of your painting that will help you understand what you're going to paint first, second, and third. The planning is really so important, especially in watercolor. This medium is harder to correct. It's so immediate. So having that plan is very important. I send you a PDF that you can download. And the great thing about this is you can have it on your phone. You could print it out. You can download this right now before you start your next painting. All you have to do is follow this link here and download my 5-step guide to planning a successful watercolor painting.